You are listening to the QSRweb Podcast.
Hello again, fellow food service fans, and welcome back to the QSRweb Podcast. I'm your host, QSRweb Editor Shelly Whitehead, and this week we're all going to saddle up and ride into Roy Rogers for the latest on that 51-year-old brand with the big heart and even bigger assortment of center-of-the-plate options. So stay where you are. Roy Rogers Franchise Company co-owner Jim Plamondon is up next for the latest on this legacy brand.
Are you a supplier or a brand working to elevate the customer experience? The Interactive Customer Experience Association connects brands, suppliers, agencies, and more who are working to create transcendent customer experiences. Let's work together to create a better customer experience ecosystem for us all. Join the ICX Association today at icxa.org.
For more than half a century now, Roy Rogers, the QSR, has hung its 10-gallon hat on its much-loved namesake, the 50s era singer-actor Roy Rogers, the man, a.k.a. the king of cowboys. But how is this QSR today pulling that image and its varied menu forward in today's hyper-competitive corral of fast food brands? That's among the topics we hope to explore now with our podcast guest today, Roy Rogers co-owner Jim Plamondon. And I hope I didn't butcher your name, Jim, but it's very difficult. Plamondon, I think, is what you had told me previously. Let me welcome you to the show.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Well, it is our pleasure. I know you might hate my kind of harkening back to your roots and legacy with this brand, but there's really something kind of wonderful about the idea of a brand spun off of the kind of real love Americans had for Roy Rogers, and honestly also cowboys and cowgirls who will always be kind of cool. So how's the brand using that to propel it forward, and where are we now with things like store count, geographic reach, and even some performance information?
Well, yeah, so we're very proud of our heritage. It has been quite a run for the brand. In fact, we celebrated our 50th anniversary in business last year in 2018. So it was 1968 when the first Roy Rogers restaurant opened in Falls Church, Virginia, not far from our headquarters here in Frederick, Maryland. And those days, the brand was under the auspices of the Marriott Corporation when it was created, and had a number of iterations over the years. It grew at one point to almost 650 restaurants. And today, currently, however, and I'll get into the story later, I'm sure you'll ask me about it, we've got 48 restaurants. We are in 6 states, so we are a mid-Atlantic brand, if you will. We're headquartered here in Maryland, and Virginia and West Virginia, as well as Pennsylvania, New York, and New Jersey. So 48 restaurants. About half are company-owned and operated, and half are franchised.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that kind of roundup of things. It's hard to distill 51 years into a few seconds there. You did very well. So, Jim, I know this brand is really going places, including new people in the organization, new initiatives across the brand, including particularly that store redesign, which I saw the photos of your new Westminster, Maryland location, and I really like it because it nicely captures that kind of working ranch feel that's so much a part of this brand, but also because it puts your variety of entrees right out in front with that triple threat of roast beef, burgers, and chicken. How big a role does the holy trio, so to speak, play in the brand's path forward?
Well, it's certainly a major component of the success of the brand, and has been for many, many years. As you call it, we affectionately call it the Holy Trio, or the big three, and roast beef, burgers, and chicken, and really no other quick serve restaurant has that kind of variety. As you know, by covering this industry for so many years, the quick serve restaurant business has exploded in terms of their menu offerings. That's for sure. Just go, drive up to any one of the drive-thrus and see the size of their drive-thru menu board these days. But Roy Rogers has almost always had this triple threat, if you will: the real roast beef, USDA choice beef. It's slow roast in the oven and sliced to order. So it's the real product. It's not a processed product. Fried chicken, fresh, never frozen fried chicken. In fact, we just upgraded not only the bone-in fried chicken, but rather our chicken tenders. And so we've got just a wonderful chicken tender product that we launched about 2 months ago. And then our line of burgers, and all quarter-pound burgers. And one of the most famous burgers that we have is called the Double R Bar Burger, which is named after Roy Rogers, the cowboy, his ranch out in California back in the day. It was called the Double R Bar Ranch. And we serve a cheeseburger with Smithfield ham on top. And it's a real popular sandwich. It's actually one of our more popular sandwiches that we serve. So that menu has really served us well for many, many years. Of course, we've got some other offerings. We've got some other grilled chicken sandwiches, and we've got our famous Gold Rush sandwich as well that people know about. That's a chicken patty with Monterey Jack cheese, bacon, and a sweet barbecue sauce on it. That too is a fan favorite. So we've certainly got some other offerings, but those three really drive the business for us, and that's really what we're known for. We say, quality, variety, and choice, and that variety is based on those three particular proteins. The choice factor is really about our fixins bar, and that's also really what sets us apart from the rest of the QSR industry. We have out in the dining room for our guests to really personalize or customize their sandwich, whether it's a burger, a chicken sandwich, or roast beef, or what have you. We've got fresh lettuce, freshly sliced tomatoes, freshly sliced onions, pico de gallo, and salsa, and a whole array of sauces as well to top your burger or sandwich off with. So certainly it sets us apart from the competition, and then it gives the guest really control of what they want to put on their sandwich. So we're not pre-making these items and holding them under a heat lamp. It's really fresh, and the guests really have the opportunity to make it what they will. So this new remodel you referred to in Westminster has been a smashing success for us. We're very excited about it. This is our brand, as we talked about, is 50 years old. This was one of our restaurants that was originally built in the 1970s as a Geno's. I don't know if that name rings a bell with you from back in the day.
It does with me.
Yeah, and Marriott, when Marriott owned Roy Rogers, acquired the Geno's brand in the early 80s. And so there were a number of these buildings in the system. And long story short, we acquired that restaurant about a decade ago, a little bit more than that. And it was an older building that, of course, we had remodeled at the time, but we did a major reimaging project here. We made some store redesign elements to enhance the efficiency of the drive-through, and also the front sales line, and made some changes there as well to speed up the process and make us more efficient. But we also did a full makeover not only of the inside dining room, but the outside as well, adding some stone towers and some nice elements to enhance the curb appeal of the building. And it's been a great success. Our sales are up nearly 10% since we did the remodel. We're very excited about it. Our guests love it. We've got some big, communal seating, which our guests just love to sit at. We've got a big round booth that bigger parties can sit at as well. So we've got kind of something for everyone. We've got a little history board, too, in the middle of the dining room that tells the history of our chain, beginning with the first restaurant in 1968 and carrying on through the Marriott days and I'll say kind of tongue-in-cheek, the dark days of when Hardee's acquired the brand, but they had acquired it just for the real estate, not for the brand.
Yeah.
And that's when we were able to, after they ended up selling off a good portion of the real estate because their efforts to convert them to Hardee's failed, we were able to buy the trademark and franchise system back in 2002 and, revitalize and relaunch it again. So we're excited about that.
It's those were dark days, and it did kind of drain the brand, but you are on a new path now. And, as you were talking about the Holy Trio, I wondered if you have or could share maybe which one of those three center of the plate proteins lead sales for Roy Rogers.
I'm happy to share it, but the answer is not necessarily exciting. It's even.
Really?
Our menu with those three proteins, it's about a third, and a third. Fried chicken, burgers, and beef. I'd say the burgers maybe lead the way ever so slightly, but Roy Rogers is known for its roast beef sandwich. As I mentioned, the USDA choice top inside round sliced to order, and it is it's a biggie. So, but it's pretty even. Dinner time is when you get your fried chicken sales, right? And a lot of 8-piece, 10-piece, 12-piece chicken going out the door for family meals and the like. So it all kind of balances out at the end. Of course, it depends on which market you're in and which restaurant, but it's all about even at the end of the day.
Well, that's really interesting, particularly as the chicken wars seem to be heating up, right now, to hear that kind of the proteins do kind of scatter evenly across the board. But it still is a lot of variety, and variety is great. But it's also very hard to execute in fast food day to day. And you're doing it not just in that trio of entree categories, but also you've got breakfast, and it seems like you have a larger than average array of sides and desserts. How do you maintain that system-wide, particularly as it relates to cost and kitchen training even?
We've been doing this a long time, so the answer, you are right. I won't argue with you. It's complex, and it's probably a little bit more complex than some of the other quick-serve restaurants that are competitors. No one is doing all three under one roof. You might have the McDonald's and Burger King of the world doing the burgers, or the KFCs and the Popeyes doing chicken, or the Arby's doing beef, but no one's really got all three under one roof. Yeah, it is a little bit more complex. It's something we've been known for. We've got systems in place and equipment in place to be able to execute on a high level. It's really important for us to not complicate the menu from here, that's for sure, because we've already got this great variety. So while we do have limited time only offerings, and we do, and our guests look forward to those each and every year, we don't rely on those every month to keep the menu exciting and different, because we think we've got a great menu even without the limited time only offerings. So breakfast is a big component, as you mentioned. We probably do anywhere between 15 and 20% of our sales are in breakfast. We're known for our platters, breakfast platters, so it's not just a grab-and-go breakfast, although we offer that with a crescent sandwich or a biscuit sandwich. But we've got things like scrambled egg platters and pancake platters and sausage and gravy and chipped beef, some items that our guests, again, love to actually typically more sit down in our restaurants than carry out and drive-through. Our drive-through percent is a little lower than a traditional QSR might be, probably in the 50 to 55% range, whereas some of the big competitors that start with an M might have an 80% drive-through percent. But that's driven by I think the food quality that we have. It's a little different. People treat us differently than a typical fast food. They like to come sit down and spend a little bit more time. These breakfast platters are a case in point. we got the fixins bar, right? And so people really like to come into the restaurant and enjoy, creating their own sandwich with the fresh lettuce, tomatoes, or onions, or what have you. So I think that really plays into our drive-through being a somewhat lower percent. We don't look at that as a negative. We actually look at that as a positive. Our guests do treat us differently than a typical fast food restaurant. We consider ourselves a cut above a typical fast food restaurant. And, we hear guests, not only do we do research on this, and we have done research to prove it out, but anecdotally, not a week goes by where a guest doesn't approach me in one of our restaurants and say, I don't normally eat fast food, but I love Roy Rogers. And that's music to my ears. We really love to hear that because we want to position ourselves a little bit different. Those other chains are huge and they're successful, but you can imagine in order for us to be successful in this industry, you've got to do something different than those competitors to stand out. And when I hear guests talk about the quality and the variety and the choice being those components that make us a little different than those competitors, I like to hear that.
Well, there really is a space for it because it seems like everybody's going in another direction these days.
Yeah.
Like all the brands that are going in the direction of plant-based meats, they seem to be the panacea now for all that ails fast food. And I'm wondering whether Rogers is planning anything along those lines with regard to center of the plate.
Truthfully, we have not executed on it yet. We're going to take a little bit of a wait and see approach. Not that we're not going to explore it, because we will. But we want to see a little bit how it plays out, and then we'll jump in. I think there's an opportunity there for a certain customer, and the question is a function of our resources and where do we want to put them. That's not high on our list at this moment, but it's something we're looking at.
Okay. I appreciate that. And I have to acknowledge that, 51 years, and there have been some hard knocks. You mentioned Hardee's. But now your family is really connected to this business, and they're holding the reins. You're holding the reins, so to speak. So how are you using some of the hard knocks the brand has taken in the past to really build a strong QSR for the future?
Well, you're right. We do. Our family has been certainly invested in this brand. Our dad worked for Marriott and really started the brand in the late 1960s as an executive with the Marriott Corporation, running the Roy Rogers brand. And he left Marriott in 1979 to become a Roy Rogers franchisee in 1980 up here in Frederick, Maryland. So initially when he left, he was open 2, 3, 4 restaurants. That might have been a nice dream of his as a franchisee. Little did he know that sons Pete and Jim would join him in business and then buy the trademark and franchise system back from, well, it was that by then Hardee's parent corporation that we bought the trademark from. So I said, my brother and I, Pete, who owned the business, we owned the business together, and we said when we bought this trademark, it was one part rational and one part emotional. Because we were bringing it back into the family, and but we really believed in it at the time, and continue to believe in it, and think that the expertise that we have, the history that we have with the brand, with starting with our dad and the things that he's passed on to us, make us a logical group to be able to grow the brand again and to make it better and bigger. And now we don't necessarily have our designs on 650 restaurants, and that's okay, but we do believe in the brand, and we think we can increase in units across this region and perhaps a little bit beyond to bring it to so many of our loyal fans. It's really interesting being a legacy brand because we have so many people that remember it when it was big. and in terms of numbers, that is. And so that's great to have. This is the equity in that Roy Rogers name and the brand is huge. So when we open up new restaurants, I mean, I'm not exaggerating when I say the lines are out the door, and people are really lined up because they remember it when. And gosh, on social media every day we're getting comments about, I remember, when I was at Roy Rogers in such and such a location, and thank you for bringing it back. And so that's really, it's a nice head start to have, have this brand equity. And now, having said that, the bar is high, right? Because nostalgia is a good thing. They don't necessarily remember, that it wasn't always perfect. And so you really got to deliver on it. So a really, really critical component of our success, and we can do this because we're in of a size that we can really manage it, is executing.
Yeah.
This is a tough industry we're in with labor challenges, and I can say labor challenges 3 or 4 times, I think, and you know what I mean. And so we really work to find the right people to run our restaurants, the right franchise partners to partner up with that really believe in our standards and our values. It's really, really important to share the value system, though, because we're not just going to, we don't want to just hire anybody or do a franchise deal with just anybody. We want to make sure that they align with us, with our values. And but if we do that, we know we've got a great brand and great product, and the guests love it when it's executed properly.
I can't let you go without, I'm thinking when you're talking about this legacy brand and on these memories that people have of it, it reminds me of some of what KFC has done with Colonel Sanders, kind of like making him the center of their marketing and tapping into that kind of institutional memory. And I wonder whether Roy Rogers is ever thinking about something like that.
We do. I can tell you, you're right on. I feel like you've been sitting in or spying on some of our marketing meetings that we have. Because, we in fact, just recently we're talking about how do you take Roy Rogers the Cowboy, who was this incredible star from back in the, 40s, 50s, and 60s, right, with movies and TV shows, and, his name and Dale Evans's name was plastered on all these different products throughout the years. But, he's not known today by the younger generation for sure. And so how do you leverage that, Roy Rogers the Cowboy? And we think there's still a role for that. And his presence is in our restaurants, and our marketing firm continues to develop ideas to somehow, keep him relevant in the brand. And, we certainly, in our restaurants, and you've seen the pictures of them, and, we've got this Western theme, if you will, which makes all the sense in the world. And our marketing strategy is around more of the modern cowboy, not necessarily an old hokey cowboy, but more of the, cowboy cool. What does that look like? And then also, what does a cowboy mean? And it's not just who he is, but what he represents: hard work, integrity, certain value system that a cowboy, honesty that a cowboy has. And so we try to,
you mean cowgirls too, right?
And cowboys and cowgirls, yes. Oh my. Absolutely. But, so how can we utilize those traits and make those a part of our messaging, not only in the store, but, in our advertising initiatives and the like. And so that's what we are continuing to do. And because we don't want to let Roy the Cowboy, he has a great name and a great, there's just a lot of equity in him. And we don't want to lose that, but how do we convey that to this next generation? That's our challenge. So we're working on it.
I can't wait to see. what's coming up. You've really piqued my interest, and to see where you put trigger. So
There you go.
I thank you so much, Jim. It's been interesting, and what a wonderful brand. It will be so fun to watch what you all do in the months and years ahead.
Well, thanks for your interest, and I enjoyed speaking with you as well.